Hi, welcome to the Elle Rush Show, where I deliver content intended to inspire, educate, and motivate. Engage with me online at ellerush.com and on social media. Enjoy the show. Hey everyone, just a quick 1-minute announcement to let you know about my virtual courses and free masterclasses. I have courses and free masterclasses based on both of my books. I have the Ultimate Thyroid Course. This is your answer to solving any thyroid issue, whether it be Hashimoto's, radioactive iodine, thyroidectomy after thyroid cancer, or just general hypothyroidism. Reverse T3 issues as well. It's an incredible value at 17 modules and 29 hours of content with amazing guest expert tutorials. I also offer the Ultimate Confidence Course. That is 15 modules and 14 hours with also a few guest expert tutorials. An incredible value, and I have free masterclasses on both of those topics as well. Visit ellerush.com to learn more. Carrie, Forrest, welcome back. This is our second conversation, but on my new podcast. I am so happy to chat with you.
Thank you. I am so happy to be here.
So for everyone out there, here's where we're going to go. Carrie is actually a badass businesswoman. She has turned a health journey that was really horrible into a massive business and offers so much stuff for women and clean eating and getting on a good train. So we're going to talk about a little bit of the business stuff and what she has to offer people towards the end. But we're going to start with talking about how her health journey was sort of turned into a business. But let's talk about that health journey because you are a thyroid cancer survivor. And your transformation is amazing.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I am actually just coming up on my 10-year anniversary of having my thyroid removed. And honestly, that was almost like the beginning of the story because after I was diagnosed and then had my thyroid removed, then I, of course, had to switch to taking thyroid replacement hormone, which I was not on prior to my cancer diagnosis. I probably should have, looking back on it, but I was really uneducated about thyroid disease, and I had been seeing just a regular conventional endocrinologist, which, by the way, since then I have fired 2 endocrinologists because they are so misinformed about thyroid disease. But I had been seeing this conventional endocrinologist, I would say, for about 10 years, because I had kind of like had a little bit of a goiter, I guess you could say. And so I was being monitored, but of course he was just measuring my TSH, and I think that's pretty much it. He did not measure my autoimmune antibodies or my thyroid antibodies, and did not measure any of the other parts of what is now considered like a full thyroid panel, and which we know is so important if you have thyroid disease. So my TSH was quote unquote normal. And I was having yearly ultrasounds. And I do remember very clearly, and this is probably around 2000 and I want to say maybe 2007. So quite a while ago. I remember him clearly saying to me, like, based on my ultrasound, he could see that my thyroid was very, very scarred. But that's all he said. All he said was, eventually you're going to need to go on thyroid replacement hormone. That's it. That's all I was told. I was never told Hashimoto's, autoimmune disease, anything about that. And I mean, partially I blame myself for not digging deeper, but I mean,
I'm not even sure the information would have been there for you to find at the time.
Exactly. Yeah. I think I do remember buying a book, and it was very overwhelming. All the reverse T3 and all that stuff, I just kind of tuned out, and I trusted doctors, and sadly I have to say that I do not trust most doctors now after my experience. But I mean, there are some good ones, and we can talk about that. But so as time went on, I continued to have like an annual ultrasound. And one year, this now we're at 2012, he said, like, okay, we've noticed a change on the ultrasound. And then he had to do a biopsy and they found cancer cells. And so pretty much the standard of care is to remove the whole thyroid just to prevent any future tumors from occurring. But then the bad part was then, of course, I had to go on thyroid replacement hormone, and I was under medicated. So I had to ask, I knew at least by that point, so we were talking about 10 years ago at this point, I knew at that point, like, because I had somebody I knew had also had thyroid cancer, and she said, be sure to get she said Cytomel, which is a T3. So I said to him, okay, I want the T4 and the T3. I don't know if I use those words, but I said I want both kinds. And so like pretty much right off the bat, I was given Synthroid and Cytomel.
Just not the right dosages?
Right, not enough. I think even after my surgery, maybe a few months, it was like 3 months, I was having my TSH tested pretty regularly, but I think it went up to like 32. And obviously I was way under medicated.
Yeah. Tell us what it felt like and the symptoms you were experiencing when you were on the wrong dosage, right, of thyroid hormone replacement after your surgery, because things got pretty bad there.
Yes, it's completely debilitating. Fatigue. I just remember the fatigue. Pretty much waking up and just not having energy to get out of bed, not feeling like a zest for life. I think I don't know if it happened gradually or all of a sudden, but then once you hit that point where you feel like you can't get out of bed, that's like pretty much a breaking point. And then I think I had actually been a fan of Mark's Daily Apple since way back, because I'm also a blogger. So I was also familiar with the Mark Sisson's blog and then the podcast, which then coincidentally, and this is not till a few years later, I heard you interviewing Dr. Forsman, and he was talking specifically about, you two were talking specifically about thyroid. And that's when I knew something had to change even further. So I would say like from 2012 to 2016, when I heard your podcast, so that's a good 4 years, I really did suffer with fatigue. That's just what I remember the most. I did not ever really have like hair, losing hair or that kind of thing. But definitely was not myself.
And you said at one point, like you would be like standing and like you could barely stand for a while. You'd have to sit down because you were just like felt so weak and exhausted.
That's true. Yes, I do remember that one time. I'm like, this is not normal. So pretty immediately when I heard your podcast with Dr. Forsman, and then for some, I don't really believe in like fate and miracles. I'm just not like a really spiritual person, but it turns out that I live in the same town where Dr. Forsman's office is. Who could have ever imagined? I was just like,
especially because you do live in a small kind of random town in California that people wouldn't associate with like maybe the best doctors.
Yeah, I know. And how did I ever not hear of him or know of him? This is like a thyroid expert who consults with people all over the world. And so I immediately called the office, and then another, quote unquote miracle, there was a cancellation. I ended up getting to see him very quickly, which he normally has, I believe, a significant waiting list. And so, my wait time from several months went to within a couple of weeks, I was able to see him and get the testing, the correct testing, get my thyroid hormone increased, which I felt better immediately. Like within 24 hours, I was feeling better.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? And I would say that, in the times when I've experimented getting off thyroid hormone and it doesn't work out, it hasn't worked out. When I start taking thyroid again, it's literally within a few days. I feel better immediately. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So I can kind of have a taste of that. Now, the way that you dose thyroid hormones is unconventional. For those in the know, or if you do have thyroid cancer out there, this is not to say that you would ever mimic what Carrie's doing, because everyone's individual. But I do want to point out your dosing schedule, because it is one that a lot of doctors who don't understand, who are uninformed, would be like, wait, what? This is crazy, right? So, but my doctor, Dr. Forsman, your doctor, it's not crazy. We know it's not crazy, but can you just give us what your dosing schedule is for the day? Because I think people who might be listening who are on thyroid cancer or might not be optimized would think that this was strange, and even doctors would think that this was crazy, but it's totally normal and a legit protocol.
Exactly. And it's the reason that I've fired my endocrinologist, is because they don't understand, and they just have these rules. Like somebody told them a rule and that's all they believe. They don't have an appreciation that maybe they should listen to how the patient is actually feeling. And then even more than that, Dr. Forson has explained to me like reasons why the TSH gets suppressed. It's not necessarily that you're taking too much hormone. It's that because you're taking like a combination of T4 and T3. I hope that I'm saying that correctly. But yeah, essentially I take my T4 once a day in the morning, and I take it with the T3, which is the fast acting. I call it Cytomel. I think I take the generic version, and I take 10 I think it's micrograms.
Right. So I think you said you take 100 micrograms of T4 in the morning with about 10 of T3.
I actually take 125
of
the Synthroid. Yeah.
T4. Okay. And then 10 of the T3. And then what happens throughout the day? Give us the other dosing times and situation.
Yeah. So then and we played, Dr. Forsman gave me the freedom to play with how I felt, because the T4 is fast acting. So it's pretty much out of your body, I believe, in 4 to 6 hours. The T3, right. So the T4 I only take once a day. That stays in your body, I think, at least 24 hours. And then the T3, I take another 10 micrograms around 11:30. And then I take another 5, and I've played with the 5 to 10, another dose in the afternoon, like around 4 p.m. And like when I was seeing this other endocrinologist, she was giving me such a hard time. She kept saying, "Oh, you're taking too much." She would say, "Hold your hands out." And she like put a paper on my hands to see if my hands were trembling, which they were not. It was really frustrating.
That's an interesting diagnostic. I had a doctor who told me I was on too much T3 because I spoke fast, and I was like, "Have we fucking met? I've been talking fast since I was a kid, man. Like, there is nothing new about that." But that's also not a proper diagnostic on overstimulation.
Really? Like, what about patient individuality? And even me taking the third dose of the T3 in the afternoon, and I go to bed pretty early, it doesn't impact my sleep. And it's not like you get a rush. It's not even like, for me anyways, it's not like I don't feel it. I don't get like, say you have a cup of coffee, you feel it pretty immediately. I don't feel it at all. It's just more like a consistent energy throughout the day. I think I definitely would feel it if I didn't take the second and third dose, but it's not like I'm looking for some kind of stimulation. I mean, if I'm tired, I'm not going to reach for thyroid hormone. I'm going to take a nap, right, or rest. So it's more, and it's all really, it's just based on my energy. And then we use the labs at this point, I'm only doing labs every 6 months. And that is just, I mean, it's really consistent now because I've been doing this now since I've been a patient of Dr. Forsman. So that's been about 6 years at this point.
There's so many ways to treat this, and it's so funny. So here you are thriving, and these doctors would still look at your dosing schedule and say, "Oh, this is wrong." And you're like, "How is this wrong? I feel great. My diagnostics are great. My labs are great. I feel
Exactly.
wonderful." And I think too, one of the things I had, a friend of a friend had thyroid cancer and they survived it. They went through the surgery, and I'm 100%, they were put on Synthroid as the usual endocrinologist would do. And they're only like, a month out of the surgery and stuff. And I guess they wanted to write a book on surviving thyroid cancer, and they wanted to talk to me. So I said, sure. So the conversation starts where he's like, well, I want to write a book about thyroid cancer. And I said, great. Can you tell me what reverse T3 is? And he was like, and I said, please don't write a book and contribute to the bullshit out there. I've read every thyroid book on planet Earth. Please don't contribute to the crap and continue to, go the uninformed endocrinologist way, or something you just researched for 1 second in a book and you're going to repeat it. Otherwise, you're doing everyone a disservice. And furthermore, yes, they put you on Synthroid. That could work with you. It might fail you at some point. It probably isn't the best for someone who has had their thyroid gland removed to be on T4 only without having some T3. So, kind of shock a little bit to a system there, but I was like, no, I'm going to be straight up and honest with you, dude. Like, unless you know these things, don't enter into this and F up more people out there with misinformation,
Yeah, I think that's good advice. And by the way, apologies to everyone for my obnoxious kitty meowing in the background. He has a thing about me talking. He just wants attention, and so apologies for that.
So let's talk about now. You are what you have done, you guys. First of all, cleaneatingkitchen.com is Carrie's website. Subscribe. How would you describe your website? I mean, I can, but I think I want to hear it from you. And also, this is just an incredible contribution to everybody of what you're offering.
Well, thank you for saying so. And I would say I originally started blogging in 2009. So I blog throughout my health journey. And I mean, I've just learned so much along the way. And then I also ended up getting a master's degree in public health with a specialty in nutrition during that time as well. So I got my degree in 2014. So my blog it originally started as like a typical what blogs were, which is kind of a journal, a personal journal, a way to connect with other people. This was all pre-social media. But then as times have progressed, and then especially after I got my degree, I felt like I had some ability and authority to be able to write on health issues. So I've adapted the recipes to kind of meet my personal needs, but also I feel like needs of other women who are managing chronic health issues, and especially focusing on like autoimmune friendly recipes. So for me, that's gluten-free and dairy-free and soy-free and refined sugar-free. I don't want to make it ever like, it's not autoimmune protocol friendly. It's not like nut free and all that, but it's like, I think a good introduction for women who've been diagnosed maybe with Hashimoto's or like rheumatoid arthritis or lupus or other types, or even like PCOS, like hormone type issues. And I just do kind of a balance of really simple recipes that are within those guidelines, and then the health articles. And it's been really interesting to see how the health website space has developed, because the way that bloggers, in case you don't know, but if you run a website, one of the best ways to make money is to have ads on your site, and then you get traffic from Google. So of course you could get traffic like from an email list or social media posts, but the best way to get like tons of traffic, because you do need quite a volume of people on your site to make money on the ads. You get paid per 1,000 visits a day. And of course, the number of visitors determines, and then how much you're paid per visitor equals your payment for the day or whatever. So the best way to do that is to have a post let's just say, for example, I wrote a post about how to make beet juice a few years ago, and it is ranked usually number one. So if you put into Google how to make beet juice, you'll see my recipe show up at the top. And I'm sure you know, as being a Google user, usually you just click on whatever is the first result, as long as it looks legitimate. So getting those articles or recipes at the top of Google is the way to get the most traffic. And then as far as like having a health website, it's been really interesting. Like there's a lot of health websites that have gotten really almost censored by Google because they post things outside what Google would say is like medical consensus. So there's some sites like Dr. Axe, Dr. Mercola that have gotten really hit over the years because they'll post things that don't fit into that medical consensus. And we know that a lot of scientific articles are delayed, like from what doctors are finding, maybe anecdotally with their patients. It will take like 10 to 20 years for the scientific literature to catch up. But that's just the way it is. I mean, if you want to play the Google game and get the traffic from Google, you kind of have to play the game. You have to play nice with Google. And so the articles I write are not like super, I mean, and I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to be writing about, and I don't like, I'm not even a practitioner, mostly a writer. And I have a few other kind of community type programs, but when I write things, like I do have a Hashimoto's article, like I think it's called The Worst Foods for Hashimoto's. And I always have to find like well-researched articles to back up anything that I write in order for Google, first of all, to have Google have it show up on the first page. But secondly, for Google not to totally almost like blackball my site, like some sites have been, if you try to push the envelope and write things that aren't backed up by science. So it's like a pretty interesting challenge to kind of play that game, but it is also really rewarding because like a lot of people, if they don't have a functional medicine doctor, like they're just maybe starting to do their own research, they're just going to Google it. And, you're not really, ideally, we would not be Googling health conditions and taking advice from random bloggers, or random websites. But that's reality, right? Like if you hear about a certain condition, you think, oh, do I have that? Of course you're going to Google it. And so I do feel like it's rewarding when people do find me. And I have other topics that I write about, like doing a sugar-free diet, going gluten-free and dairy-free. And those types of topics aren't really, they don't have to be too heavily researched. I mean, it's not like you're going too far out on a limb when you're talking about doing a sugar-free diet. So it's really cool because then I get to connect with other women, and I feel like I'm kind of trying to make the world like a better place, because when I was suffering with these things, I felt like there weren't that many resources. And so I'm trying to like offer as many resources to other women as I can, and maybe try to make up, or I don't know, try to just contribute to making the web space, like, I don't know, have a better messaging. And a lot of these articles I also find, and podcasts, are done by men, and that's fine. I certainly think like male practitioners can have a lot of amazing experience and advice, but I mean, if you're truly want to understand like what it's like to go through perimenopause, say, I'm sorry, but a man is not going to understand that.
Nope.
Fully. So anyways,
what it feels like. Yeah. And also just to say about Carrie, everyone is extremely successful at this. This is like, she makes an amazing living doing this. If you have ever thought, oh, it's maybe too late to blog or whatever, you Google Carrie Forrest interviews. There's great interviews with her on business podcasts, even talking about the model and how she does this. And again, you can always subscribe to her website and see how she does this as well. But I think you're just an inspiration for anyone out there who wants to even start a blog, that you can indeed make an incredible living just doing that.
Yeah, it's true. I love talking to other people about like who are interested in building their website with this. It's called like a display advertising model. And like I also do affiliates. Of course, like it's always nice to have a variety of revenue streams, but by far, if you want to, like I have a friend, she's just a straight food blogger. She doesn't do any health articles, and she makes $1 million a year with her food blog. So just to give you, and I'm not in her category, but I hope to be someday. And just to give you an idea of how much money can be made from this like display advertising. But you're talking about having millions of visitors to your website a month. So
Gotta start somewhere. Yeah.
That's true. You do. Although I would maybe heed my advice. Like I see some people, they want to start like a website about weight loss. But if you don't have like certain health credentials, like reputable health credentials, you're probably not going to be able to get your posts ranked on the first page. Like it'll be really difficult. So that's just one kind of caveat I would offer.
Yeah, there's all these interesting nuances, like you said, that have to be sort of considered before you go into it. And also know that you're not going into it and you're writing things that Google would reject or put away. And again, it's almost like with anything, it's like a product, and being able to say something about it. There's certain things companies can't say and what you can. There's rules in advertising, right? So it sort of is the same here, right? With the Google Analytics. And I'm glad you pointed that out, so that before people start writing 500 articles to go release on their new blog, that they consider these factors.
Yeah. And I'm always happy to, like, if anybody wants to email me and get my advice, my free advice, I'm happy to offer that, because I love like the game of it all. I find it really challenging and I love the strategy of it. And so I also think that there's room for everybody's voice. It's just a matter of like trying to find the right niche for you and to make sure like you have the right credentials if you're going to write about a health issue. Or if maybe it'd be better if you went more like the recipe route, or you were like wanted to write about spiritual topics or motivational things, where the having like the right credentials isn't as important. Google calls it your money or your life topic. So anything that you would consider your money or your life. So finance and health are the ones they're real sticklers about having strong credentials before they're going to rank your website.
Love it. Let's talk about the offerings you do have. First of all, you have a ton of free recipes and recipe ebooks, but let's talk about the Clean Eating 101 and the sugar-free course.
Okay, yeah. And I will also say that I kind of chose clean eating after I had a bad experience with being on a vegan diet for like 3.5 years. And like this is again, going back like several years, we're talking about like 2010, I kind of fell into this trap of thinking like vegan was the best diet, like for everything. That was the messaging that I was getting. And I've learned so much more since then about like how our bodies work and what our bodies need to be, have like a balance of macronutrients and things like that. So,
well, it's interesting. I'm going to throw out real quick. I have a male friend who's 33, but he's been a pescatarian for 14 years. So the last time he had any kind of meat was 14 years ago. And actually, he's also Dr. Forsman's patient. He's a friend of mine. Some of my friends have all shifted them over to Dr. Forsman. And so he got his blood work done for his appointment coming up in a few days with Dr. Forsman. And I'm looking through it and I noticed that his ferritin is like disastrously low.
Mm.
And, he's a man, he's not menstruating. But I said, you know what? I know you're a pescatarian, but like, when is the last time you had meat? He's like 14 years ago. I go, have you ever taken iron or anything? Like, I mean, you know, and it was just such a glaring, obvious problem. There's more investigation to be had there. But again, sometimes even if you think, oh, well, I'm not a vegan, therefore won't be problems. But even if you're not eating like animal protein, you still need to really look at some elements where you might need to supplement if you're not getting the right nutrients there. Because again, you're making a conscious choice to go against what your DNA expects of you. And that's fine, but it comes with consequences.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even me, I wish I could eat dairy. Like I've been actually learning a lot about like the benefits of raw dairy or fermented dairy, but my body, I think because my autoimmune disease like I had Hashimoto's for so long untreated before I met Dr. Forsman, that my body is just really, really sensitive. But yeah, so I chose like this kind of clean eating title as kind of like an alternative to real food, but that's essentially what it means to me. So I did have a vegan blog, like I transitioned my blog away from being a vegan blog, which was not too fun because a lot of people did not like that.
Right.
But to put it mildly, but now I call it like kind of just a real food diet, like a clean eating diet. And it's just like real food and it's very flexible. And so that I just kind of like that is my perspective, and what I put out to the world is kind of like a balanced, flexible, individual approach. And so I do find I have some Facebook support groups on both clean eating and going sugar free. And I find that a lot of people are just really, really new to even this concept of real food. I mean, they've just been eating out of like like processed foods or fast food. And so that's what I do have a clean eating 101 course, which is really just like a 1 hour introductory video with some supporting PDFs, and then the Facebook support group. And then I also have a sugar-free group, which is kind of based around doing like a 30-day sugar-free challenge. So those are some like pretty inexpensive, just basic offerings that I have that I really enjoy connecting with people, like actually seeing what their struggles are. Because like on one hand, I'm a blogger and I'm writing articles and publishing them, but it's like going into a black hole. I'm not like, I don't see if, I don't get a lot of feedback. I'm sure people are reading, but I don't know. Like they don't tell me, oh, that was a great article. So it just feels like very kind of one-sided. But then when I can interact with people, like in the Facebook group, or occasionally I'll do live webinars, and then it's really cool. Like we all get on Zoom and it's really fun to see people's faces and stuff like that. So yeah, so if anyone wants to, I'm sure your audience is very, a lot more educated than the general public about nutrition. But if you want to sign up for my newsletter, that's free. And I do have some recipe ebooks and stuff. But if you sign up for the newsletter, then you get like the emails that have the various offerings. And so that's probably like a good way to stay connected if people are interested.
Over all of these years of all the different, dietary elements that you've introduced, recipes, are there a few things that you're like, oh, even though it may be on a clean, healthy list for a lot of other people, are there certain things that you're like, you know what? Broccoli doesn't work for me, but this does? Or has there been something where like, my body loves this particular food? Have you noticed things like that over time?
You know what I've been noticing recently, because I've noticed I do notice like my age group, or our age group, I would say women in late 30s to much older seem to have grown up with like a lot of the processed foods. But I've noticed that the younger women are so much more savvy. Like the women right now who are like 20 or 25 And so I'm learning from them. And so I never ate liver, and I
Mm.
actually don't eat liver, but I've just fairly recently started taking a desiccated liver supplement. And I haven't even talked to Dr. Forrest about it to get his opinion, but I thought, what the heck, I'm going to try it. Apparently, like it's a good source of um, vitamin A in the form of retinol, and I think some other things, and B vitamins.
Selenium. Yeah.
Um, Maybe I don't even know, but I've been kind of experimenting with that, and I did try liver one time, and it was like not happening because the flavor was just too strong. I think you kind of have to maybe grow up with it. But I do remember my grandmother, who's passed, she ate liver, but then of course my mom didn't eat liver, I didn't eat liver, and you can kind of see how like our in the last few generations we got pulled away from
Organ
like the
meats.
ancestral way of eating. So yeah, I mean I never really would have considered adding liver back to my diet, but the desiccated liver is like it's just a capsule, and so it's you don't taste it, thank goodness.
Yeah,
But yeah, that's something.
that's a good one. So Whole Foods or other places, sometimes if you ask them in the back, it's very hard to get fresh liver because it goes quickly. So it's usually frozen. But it's one of the cheapest things to get. Like grass-fed beef liver is literally one of the least expensive things. And what I would do is I go to the butcher there at Whole Foods and I'll say, hey, do you have any grass-fed beef liver in the back? They'll be like, oh yeah, we've got slabs of it. I'll be like, great. Can you slice me off a thing and then cube it up for me? Like put it in 1-inch cubes or whatever. And they're like, yeah,
Mhm.
great. And they throw it in there. And then I throw them in the freezer. And when you take one out, it defrosts quickly. But here's the thing. Yes, cooking it and eating it can be rank. If you are not used to the smell and taste, you will be running for the hills. It's pretty horrible. So I'm not going to lie. Now, I love pate and all that kind of stuff. But even if you like pate, straight up beef liver is a little rough. I will say this, though. When I did a carnivore experiment for like a month, um, if you can tolerate it, it's now some people will take it right out of the freezer and like they'll just like hold their nose and eat it raw. You don't need to cook it, but it takes very little to just fry it up in a pan. When I would cook like just a 1 ounce or 2 ounces, like just very tiny bit of liver, and I would just eat that for my first meal in the morning, I'm telling you, I literally had energy and was satiated for 10 hours for just that
Yeah,
little
that's amazing.
tiny, tiny skosh of organ meat right there. Um, yeah, our ancestors and in general, even our more recent ancestors, like great grandparents, things like that, they ate liver, they ate organs in their diet, right? I mean, even a UK dish, steak and kidney pie, right? Traditional. So I'm glad we're sort of getting back to that. It's important. And, even out in the wild, when let's say a pack of wolves kills an animal, the alpha gets their first choice. And what do they go for? The organ meats. They are the most nutritious, they're the most
Exactly.
dense. And so now I love that other companies, Rep Provisions, who I love, and other people make blends now, right? They'll make a blend of ground beef that will also have some ground organs into it. You can also kind of slip it into a burger. You could take that little 1 ounce of, you know, liver out of the freezer, let it sit there, get all, soft and yucks, and then throw that into the mix of ground beef that you're mixing together. And you can barely taste something like that, yet you're able to throw it in there if you want your children to get it without them knowing, things like that. So there's kind of ways to hide it, in a way without tasting it. And I love that some of the companies are doing that, making these blends with ground beef and some other organ meat.
Exactly. And
Your
there's
cat
also,
agrees too, because he
yes, he's
also
like,
wants.
I would like some liver. Thank you very much. Yeah, and also I think oysters are another food, sardines that are
Yes.
just really nutrient dense. But yeah, I mean, me being a kid of the standard American diet, I just do not have a taste for any of those. I consider them to be exotic foods, even though they're not really. And like you said, they're not even super expensive. You can buy
So cheap.
a tin of smoked oysters at Trader Joe's for a couple bucks. But it's just a matter of like getting used to the flavor.
Yeah, or even making one's own bone broth is quite easy. The chicken necks and chicken things and things like that that you need to make the bone broth are very, very, very cheap, because no one
Hmm.
wants this stuff. Same with marrow bones. I mean, you could probably get them for free from a butcher. I mean, yeah, you could give them to your dog, but you can cook them up. And marrow is another one that is a little bit like liver, where people are like, ew, gross. It's like this snot gelatinous thing in the middle of a bone. But, and just credit to Ashley Van Houten, who wrote Carnivore-ish and another book about organ meats. You can take that cooked bone marrow, throw it in and make a butter out of it. Again, sort of hiding it, but getting it in there, you know what I mean? Kind of thing. So there are lots of ways to dance around the taste of it.
Yeah, yeah. And to be honest, like I don't really even get that deep on my website because I'm really talking to people who are much more at the beginning of the journey. I mean, I just try to talk about even having one serving or, even trying to get 1 to 2 servings of vegetables a day, is where like the general public is.
Yes.
So, yes, doing stuff like liver and stuff is much more advanced.
Much more advanced. And you know what? That's another thing too about your website. If you know someone who's struggling or just wants to start to get on a thing, I mean, Carrie's not sitting there talking about restricting calories and doing anything drastic. She's talking about just here are some wonderful options and recipes to start eating whole, real foods. And again, I think the majority, like you and I are not at the beginning, but the majority of the population is at the beginning. And if you guys know someone out there who's struggling, who doesn't want to read, quote, another diet book, just send them to Carrie's website. Her emails are amazing. The recipes are incredible. And again, sort of guiding you through the simple basics of like, how do I do this? I mean, it doesn't need to be complicated. And that's what I love about your site and what you offer is that it is so easily digestible, not to make that pun, but.
Thank you so much. And, as I always tell you, I'm forever grateful for you introducing me to Dr. Forsman. And he has a great, like for people who want more of the advanced stuff, he has an Instagram where he's been a Middle Path Medicine, where does weekly, like almost having a session with a doctor. I mean, it's really valuable information.
Yes, he does these IG lives. I'm so glad you mentioned that. He does IG lives like every Monday morning or so, and they're in depth and on whatever topic of the day, not to mention he's always keeping up with whatever viral stuff is out there and going on and giving the best advice with that. Middlepathmedicine.com is his website, but same handle for Instagram. And like, pay attention and rewatch them. They're all on his profile. So if you miss one live where, you can definitely interact and ask questions, you can go back and watch some of these things. I mean, he'll have a whole live on just like, hey, what's the basic nutritional protocol? What's the basic like vitamin protocol? Like, what am I supposed to do? I don't know anything about supplements. And the fact that and I know you and we know how busy he is, for him to even do that is incredible. He's just one of those givers who's like, let me share with the world my 30 plus years of practicing medicine to help more people if they can't see me.
It's amazing. We're really lucky to have him, and I'm so grateful I found him through you.
Yay. Okay, so tell us, so when we go to cleaneatingkitchen.com, where's the best place to start? Just subscribe to your newsletter and we'll get all the information we need for the sugar-free course, or what's the best way for someone to go, hey, I want to check out what she's got going on?
Yeah, I would say to subscribe is definitely the best way, because I have like an auto series, which is based on like starting from the beginning, like what is clean eating, a clean eating shopping list, which is just, basic like fruits, vegetables, blah, blah, blah. So just really starting at the beginning, and then it kind of goes through getting into recipes. And then if you want any of the paid offerings, but you don't have to, you can just stay on the newsletter. And that's definitely the best way to get started if you want to become part of my community.
What's one of your favorites? So we're talking in the beginning of fall, and even though we're in California where it's a little bit, it's still warm, kind of summer-ish. I always get excited because after like 4 months of heat, we'll come up on those like cozy chili, and you're like, ooh, I can make a hot meal, like, ooh, what's one of your favorite? Yeah, thank God I can make a soup. What's one of your favorite, like of all the recipes on your website, but in general, what's one of your favorite, like, fall, winter, cozy, like whether if you're just going to kind of do it up, whether it's for you or for other people, but if you're just like, oh, here's my go-to comfort, like what would that be?
Well, I have a sweet tooth, so like I'm always gonna go for desserts. So I have a paleo pumpkin pudding that's made with, it's not super fancy. It's made with coconut milk, pumpkin puree, pumpkin pie spice, egg yolks, And I mean, just something like that to me is eaten warm, or actually you could eat it chilled, like maybe with some coconut whipped cream.
Yes.
Like that's something that I would go for. And that one's pretty popular.
Now that you mention it, I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to do that right away because this is definitely like the yummy pumpkin season.
Yeah. And then I use sweeteners like maple syrup. And I don't always offer like the keto options, but I know people who are like really strict on added sugars. They are pretty savvy about swapping out, like with the Lancantos or the
Monk fruit,
erythritols kind of thing. But yeah, I do use like maple syrup, coconut sugar. I try not to go overboard with it, but yeah, as I said, I do have the sweet tooth, so I can't cut out the desserts completely.
Well, I love that as well, because so if people want some cleaner eating dessert types, and that's the thing too, is you start to eat cleaner over time. Those heavily sugared things that are from the store and packaged and just overdone in a disaster don't seem right. And then when you start eating clean, like blueberries and whipped cream is like sweet enough. You know what I mean? Or something like what you're talking about, a more natural sort of pumpkin pudding without crazy amounts of stuff, but still a little bit natural derived sugars. There's just so many ways to do this without going for the garbage.
Totally. And then I think if you are nourishing yourself, like with real foods for your other meals, you're really not going to have that much room for dessert. Or if you do, like one serving is enough and is satisfying. So that's kind of a reward as well, that you can enjoy desserts, but you don't have to go overboard.
So also your Instagram is beautiful and wonderful, but go to cleaneatingkitchen.com. And is that also your handle on Instagram?
My Instagram is Clean Eating Carrie.
Clean Eating Carrie. Yeah. Carrie.
Thank you.
Go follow her on Instagram, sign up for her newsletter, great tips, great recipes. And again, turning a health journey into an amazing business as well. Just that other component of it. You're just sort of an all around success story. Like talk about being handed a fucking lemon of thyroid cancer and then, you know, turning into something that is helping millions of people get on board and maybe avoid some of the things you and I both ran up against, which I think is the point. If we could prevent someone from going in this direction, not that it would have been avoidable, we don't know, right? But there's no woulda, coulda, shouldas. It happened. But at least, you know, hey, start off your life or start now on a different trajectory and you can avoid a lot of issues.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, thank you for all the help and resources you've provided me.
Well, thank you so much. And hopefully at some point we have to meet up in California. I have to drive up and say hello.
Yeah, for sure.
See what's going on with that cat. I'm going to have a word. I'm going to drive up there and have a word with your cat. No, I'm just kidding. Well, thank you so much. All right, everyone, we'll put everything in the show notes to connect with Carrie. But again, cleaneatingkitchen.com and on Instagram, Clean Eating Carrie. Thank you so much for joining us. And for everyone else, we'll see you next week.
Hey listeners, you know, over the years, a ton of companies have approached me to collaborate, but I will only promote companies whose products I believe in and that I actually use and consume on a regular basis. So let me tell you about some of my favorite companies that I can offer you discounts for. Rep Provisions, an amazing company doing incredible things for our planet, topsoil, and animals with regenerative agriculture, and it's my #1 source for quality pasture-raised meat and chicken. Visit repprovisions.com and use code L15 for 15% off. I'm also obsessed with a company called Carnivore Crisps. They make a lean, all-natural, and delicious alternative to conventional snacking, made with just real meat and real salt. Totally addictive, and my favorite ones are the beef brisket and the ribeye. Visit carnivorecrisps.com and use code PALEO10 for 10% off. I also love and regularly use Paleo Valley products. They make amazing supplements and delicious paleo products. I use the superfood greens powder, grass-fed beef sticks, the organ complex, and their bone broth bars. I love the lemon and apple. I also use their essential C complex and more. Visit paleovalley.com/promos/LRUS for 15% off. I also love Primal Kitchen. They make delicious paleo-approved, gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, and no refined sugar products. And I use them daily, from their collagen powders and sauces and marinades to their avocado and olive oil. So good, so healthy. Visit primalkitchen.com and use code L10 for 10% off. I also love paleo powder and use it almost on everything I cook. They make incredible seasoning blends, and they also have these incredible grain-free coatings that feel just like crispy breadings that you would have had prior to knowing that there's another way. So visit paleopowder.com and use code L15 for 15% off.